Welcome to State Senator Bill Dodd's latest in a series of virtual town halls on the coronavirus epidemic. Tonight's event is in partnership with KSVY and Sonoma TV, and the topic is schools, reopening, and the role of innovation.
This meeting is being recorded.
I'm Rick Wynn, one of the volunteer hosts on KSVY 91.3 FM in Sonoma. This evening, Town Hall is being presented on all our platforms, including Sonoma TV, Comcast Channel 27 in the Sonoma Valley, SonomaTV.org, the Sonoma TV channel on YouTube, and KSVY 91.3 in Sonoma, as well as streaming on KSVY.org and on your home smart device. Tonight's event features three distinguished panelists talking about public education and the challenges and lessons learned from the coronavirus pandemic, the reopening of our schools, and the continuing role of innovation, including remote learning. They will take your questions starting around 6:30. The studio call-in number is 707-933-9133. That's 707-933-9133, but please not until 6:30. Senator Dodd represents all or part of 6 North Bay counties, including Napa, Sonoma, Solano, Contra Costa, Sacramento, and Yolo counties. And now I turn it over to Senator Dodd, who will make opening remarks and introduce our panel for this evening. Senator Dodd?
Thanks very much, Rick. Really appreciate it. And thanks to our panelists and KSVY for convening this latest in a series of town halls. This is the 12th virtual town hall since the pandemic started. And tonight we'll be talking about schools, reopening, and the continued role of innovation in our educational system. I'm very glad to be joined by this distinguished group, and thanks to the hundreds of people tuning in tonight. Tonight, California families are looking forward to doing something they haven't done in a long time, and that's return to school. After more than a year of social distancing and remote learning, in-person instruction will resume this fall. Our children will return to campuses. Thanks to our high vaccination rate and low infections, a full reopening is planned. At this time, masks will be required inside school buildings with local oversight. Also, some form of remote learning will continue either through independent study or local school board decree. But for the most part, our children will be returning safely to the classroom. And that's a good thing. As Governor Newsom has said, in-person learning is best not only for the core learning, but to meet the mental health and social, emotional needs of our children. Getting back to a healthy educational routine is essential. And to that end, the legislature and the governor have agreed to invest $93.7 billion in education this year. That includes a record $21,000 per pupil for K through 12. It also includes a phase-in by 2023 of a universal transitional kindergarten, something that I've been advocating since I joined the legislature. So there is reason to be excited. Now, we learned important lessons from the pandemic. Our computers can be used for more than just answering emails and online shopping. When something like a pandemic hits, they are a lifeline to the rest of the world. We all got quick education in Zoom meetings. Virtual school, work, doctor visits became the norm, but not for everyone. The shift to remote lifestyle excluded many low-income and underserved communities who just did not have the adequate internet access. That also happened in rural areas. In response, our recently adopted state budget includes $6 billion for expanding broadband services. My own bill, SB 556, is a piece of that puzzle. It will help expedite broadband projects through the local government approval process. Not surprisingly, my bill is supported by educators and equity groups. And for me, there's nothing more important than supporting our children and our schools as they navigate this challenging time. And we simply cannot allow economically disadvantaged people to remain disconnected. Now, here tonight with us are three people on the front lines of education and innovation. And there are also three people that I think are, really leaders, not only in their field, but individually. All three are I consider very good friends of mine. First, Tony Thurman, California Superintendent of Schools. He'll share his thoughts about the pandemic and reopening of our campuses this fall. Also, there is Sunny WrightMcPeak, President and CEO of the California Emerging Technology Fund. I'm interested in her views about the future of remote learning and other innovation in schools. And finally, we have Lizette IsraelHenderson, Solano County Superintendent of Schools, who can talk about her experiences in one of North Bay's largest population centers. First, let's hear from Superintendent Thurman. Superintendent?
Senator Dodd, thank you for the introduction, and thanks for having us on. And thank you for your leadership and what you just described, a record investment in California education. From my watch, what that means is, while we are just coming out of what's probably the toughest experience that we will have in our lifetime, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build back better as we go forward, to rise from what has been a very difficult experience and to build an educational system that recognizes that it wasn't always good enough for all of our students and that we have the opportunity to make it better for all of our 6 million students. As always, I want to commend our students, our parents, educators, and administrators for their resilience during these very difficult times. We've watched all kinds of hardship, the loss of loved ones due to the pandemic, natural disaster, time and time again. The pandemic put a spotlight on a problem that I'm sure Sunny will talk about and others will talk about, a digital divide that should not exist. When we went into this pandemic, more than 1 million students were without access to a working computer or high-speed internet. And there's no question that if that's your only way to connect to school, you're going to experience a kind of learning gap because you don't have the basic tools that you need to go forward. And so we've got a lot of work to do to recover from those challenges. Obviously, there were impacts to our local economies. There are impacts to our jobs, our housing, but we are more than our circumstances. And as Californians, we're moving forward and we're finding a way. And it is my guess and belief and expectation that every one of our schools will be open for in-person instruction. Obviously, there'll be some exceptions for some families. And there are guidelines, as Senator Dodd pointed out, for how to help make that happen. But we know that our students need access to connection to their teachers and their peers and the ability to learn in person. And they've just come through the most difficult trauma that I think we can imagine. It's something that I think about all the time. I'm trained as a social worker, and in my own life, I experienced trauma as a young child. My dad was a Vietnam vet who never came home from the war. I lost my only parent, my mom, to cancer when I was 6 years old, and I got raised by my cousin who I didn't know until I showed up on her doorstep. We depended on a lot of public programs, on food stamps, on the free lunch program, and on government cheese. Senator, I've said it many times, I ate so much government cheese, I thought that USDA was a brand name. But these programs helped to save my life. And no public program more important than getting a great public education. We owe that to our students. And education helped me to overcome trauma, and we can help our students overcome trauma. As we go forward, we need to be thinking about counseling and social emotional supports. And this budget that the senator and the legislature, the governor, and I and others have worked on provides billions for mental health supports. This budget envisions all kinds of resources to support tutoring activities that will help to accelerate learning, meaning just to help offset the learning gaps that our students have experienced. And, as we think about back to school, and literally we have some schools in our state that are opening next week. I've been traveling all over the state to celebrate those schools that had been open, and want to give a big shout out to Napa Valley Unified School District, who opened early during the pandemic. They stayed open. They found ways to keep the spread of coronavirus low. As we enter back into the school reopening time, now's the time for us to be thinking about vaccines and an opportunity for those children who are 12 and older to get a vaccine, and for those who want one to get one, because that means we can get back and we can keep everyone safe. And so, Senator Dodd, I appreciate you for all that you're sharing, for your constituents, for being the leader that you are. It was an honor to serve with you in the Assembly and to serve with you now. And I'm happy to answer questions as they come up tonight. and very honored to be on this conversation with the great host, Rick Wynn, and with these wonderful panelists that you've convened for us tonight. I'll put in a pin in it for now and look forward to any questions that may come up that I may be able to help with. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurman. I will note for the audience that this is your second appearance on this town hall, and I appreciate it very, very much. Now we're going to turn to Sunny WrightMcPeak. Sunny, take it away.
Thank you, Senator Dodd. And I just want to join Superintendent Thurman in commending your leadership over the many years as a champion for people who are disadvantaged and a champion for digital equity. And thanks, Rick. And what a great pleasure to be here also with Superintendent IsraelHenderson. I want to just acknowledge that we, the California Emerging Technology Fund, who have a mission assigned to us by the California Public Utilities Commission to close the digital divide in California, we understand that technology is just a tool. It's a powerful and empowering tool, but just a tool. In a 21st century, it is an essential tool. And we have said for more than a decade that digital access is a 21st century civil right. Understanding that and the challenges that existed before the pandemic, where we saw many students and families living in low-income communities having challenges just trying to keep up at school because there's so many other things going on in their lives. In a situation where there's concentrated and persistent poverty that is rooted in systemic racism, there has to be extraordinary intervention. And so we at the California Emerging Technology Fund long ago knew that school-based strategies were at the heart of actually closing the digital divide. And then the pandemic hit, and no one, I certainly couldn't have anticipated what that would be like as a challenge. Immediately overnight, as you heard Tony talk about it, I know Lisette is going to use experience at Bill, that we saw not only spotlighted a digital divide, but a revealed digital cliff with families, children, students falling off into deeper poverty, greater isolation, and a true crisis. And so I say that because all of the immediate work that all of you did, and we have the pleasure of working with the California Department of Education and trying to get the word out about how families could get online, working with many school districts that are our partners in a program we call School to Home that Superintendent Thurman has been a great supporter for. We've worked with Superintendent Nemco in Napa County, and so we'd love to work more closely also with you, Superintendent IsraelHenderson. Those school districts that participate in School to Home and those schools within those districts had literally no problem making the transition to at-home or distance learning. The reason was that School to Home not only is providing the technology to students, but it is a full transformation of the culture in low-performing schools in low-income neighborhoods, where the leadership of the school all pulls together, led by the principal, to ensure that technology is incorporated into teaching, learning, and deep parent engagement. We train at least 80% of all the parents. Now, why is that important as we return to in-classroom instruction? Remember, that is how we started. It is because that gap in achievement existed before the pandemic, and it is even greater now with lost learning. We have to step it up, not only to make up for what was not capable or possible during the last 18 months, but now as we go into this next school year, how do we bring up all schools, particularly those schools in low-income communities where the students and the parents have the tools to communicate with their teachers, no matter what the home language is, to be able to use the technology for more at-home work and learning, and for more flexibility in terms of the learning situations. I will personally say, I'm glad that students are going to be able to be back together. Teachers love to be able to interact with their students, and let me underscore, technology is no substitute for a teacher. We need a teacher in every classroom, and boy, I am so impressed with the dedication of principals and teachers in schools in disadvantaged communities. They need our support, and this is that opportunity in lifetime that Superintendent Thurman talked about with champions such as you, Senator Dodd, to say technology has to be part and parcel with our learning. It is not to be just used in terms of times of emergency. It has to be a central part of our curriculum going forward. So I pledge to you from the California Emerging Technology Fund that we continue to welcome the opportunity to be your partner, to be a partner with the California Department of Education, with all of the schools, the county offices of education throughout the state, and to the legislature, to actually not only close the digital divide, but close the achievement gap for our students.
Thank you very much, Sunny. Now we're going to turn to Lizette IsraelHenderson. Welcome. You're on mute, Lizette.
I was brilliant, actually. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, Senator Dodd, for having me. It's a pleasure to sit on this panel alongside my esteemed colleagues to discuss, in particular, education, which really sits at the center of our communities. And Sunny, I was so excited. This year we did partner with the California Emerging Technology Fund and are working mightily to make sure to get that information out to our school communities. As Superintendent Thurman said, this pandemic has indeed been challenging. And schools are having to continuously adjust to follow the evolving guidance. As we just heard yesterday, that the guidance was released by the California Department of Public Health and continues to emerge. Educators transitioned into virtual teaching overnight, and in some cases did have steep learning curves to effectively use technology to engage students. We recognize that some students struggled in a distance learning environment as well. Educators had to pivot, adapt, be resourceful and resilient, and our families had to do the same. One area of concern that many educators have is the social emotional needs of students when they return to in the fall. And this is something that Superintendent Thurman and Sunny have both referenced. The wraparound services that we were traditionally able to provide students on school campuses were challenging to provide during the stay-at-home orders. One way that the Solano County Office of Education addressed this challenge was to leverage over $1.7 million in grant funding from various sources, including the California Department of Education and our local county behavioral services. This allowed us to establish school-based wellness centers across Solano County. This required strong partnerships with our community partners, and over the past 2 years, we assisted with the implementation of more than 40 school-based wellness centers at our K-12 schools, our juvenile detention facility, and our adult education sites, which are now poised to address students' needs when we reopen schools. We're very excited about that. In addition, our mental health program staff were eager to continue to address ways to continue to offer the mental health support to students via telehealth counseling sessions. This required a robust technology access infrastructure that allowed students to log on to their electronic device and still receive ongoing mental health support from home. So critically important. Our staff was also able to modify social emotional learning curriculum to be offered to students in groups via Zoom throughout the county. In the past year, we also instituted a digital universal mental health screening for all of our County Office of Education program students, meaning that each student had the opportunity to complete the screening aimed at highlighting areas of concern, including depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and the very trauma exposure that Superintendent Thurman has referenced. Our trained mental health staff were able to quickly identify the areas where support was needed and route our students to appropriate support services, including on-site therapeutic support and linkage to a variety of community-based organizations. Technology enabled us to do this. As we move forward toward reopening our school campuses for the 21-22 school year, we have an incredible opportunity to channel lessons learned, our resilience, our resourcefulness toward reimagining the educational experience for our students. We have the opportunity to acknowledge opportunity gaps and barriers to learning that have already been referenced and move forward with a critical need and focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as we reconsider our old paradigms. We have an opportunity to look at education and learning not only from the academic perspective, but also from the social emotional perspective that acknowledges that students learn differently from each other and are inspired to learn, grow, and thrive in a multitude of ways. We also have an opportunity to engage parents and guardians as well as our business and community leaders in supporting our students, creating opportunities for learning, leveraging community resources, and amplifying the work schools and our organizations across our county and state are doing to enrich and support meaningful student learning. We have the potential, and that's what I'm so excited about. We have great potential to harness the beginning of a new era for students and educators alike. What an opportunity. Yes, it has been a very difficult year. And what an opportunity. Things will undoubtedly be different when school campuses reopen. We know this. And this is not a bad thing. New challenges will arise. And I look forward to the new innovations and ideas that will pave the way for better learning and better outcomes for our students. And again, I thank you, Senator Dodd, for your invitation and your leadership. I'm excited to be here tonight to further discuss the coming school year and to answer any questions.
Well, thanks, Lizette. And thanks to all our speakers. And Rick, we'll turn it over to you now.
I have a number of questions here that relate to going back to school, of course, because that is what's happening. Questions such as, why is it good for our children to return to their campuses this fall? What is the reaction of families to the prospect of returning? And a whole bunch of questions about masks. So I'd like to start with the two superintendents on this. And basically, why is it, I think we've covered a bit of the emotional and social connection that's good for students coming back to campus. But what's the reaction that you're getting from parents about students going back to campus and having to wear masks and the whole question of vaccinated and unvaccinated? Start with you, Superintendent Thurman.
Thanks, Rick. I'll keep it brief because you have an incredible county superintendent in Lisette Estrella Henderson. As her name says, Estrella, by my count, means star. And she is a star. And I can tell you that going back to March 13th, which is the date that I count the start of the pandemic, she and I have been on the phone many times. We've been in many conversations. She's been an incredible advocate for the students and families in Sonoma County. And even before that, our conversations about career technical education, preparing students for the future, you really have a great champion. And so I believe that you'll hear from her that the leadership across your county in terms of schools, you have deep commitment from every aspect of the educational family that is ready to welcome your students back. You have great teachers, great administrators, our classified staff, who, by the way, in our state delivered more than 500 million meals during the pandemic, right? As you heard Superintendent Estrella Henderson say, school is a place for learning but sometimes we have to help our students overcome barriers that get in the way of their learning. When our kids are hungry or hurt, that can impede their success. They can still learn, but we have to be able to help them with those resources. And I believe that you will see that in the schools in Solano County, the level of preparation that is needed, support the counseling needs, the tutoring needs, the after-school program needs, and of course, issues around vaccines and things of that nature. Look, I wish that we were in a place where no one had to wear a mask. I really do. The State Department of Public Health has said that everyone in a school should be wearing a mask, at least until children under the age of 12 can be approved for vaccines. Now, by most counts, we expect that to be sometime around October. Maybe shortly after Halloween. But, like I said, I wish that we didn't have to wear a mask. But the reality is that our kids can come back to school and they can be safe and they can get the benefit of a top quality education. And I think that Solano County is going to be a great example and a shining example of that education. And so I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent IsraelHenderson. She can tell you the specifics and the details about the schools in this great county.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurman. Rick, the question of the reaction to families to the prospect of returning to campus this fall is a really good one. We know that the spectrum of the needs and preferences for students and families is frankly quite broad, and there is no one size fits all. And distance learning has been very challenging, both economically and emotionally for some families. I will say that for many students, the optimal learning environment includes in-person instruction with a teacher in a classroom where students have a sense of community and belonging, where students have access to hands-on support that encourages inquiry, development of resilience, and where we readily have the instructional interventions and resources available to address students' needs. Equally as important is the opportunity to build those social emotional skills, to be creative and to build the relationships with their classmates and their teachers. Frankly, it's hard to know the preferences of every family, but what I am hearing from most of our students and families is that they are looking forward to returning to their school campuses and communities. And our administrators are looking forward to opening our school campuses, to having our students back. Our educators want to be with their students, and students and families want to be with their educators. So we are really looking forward to making this happen, knowing that there will be challenges along the way. But if there's anything that we've learned, is that together, leveraging our resources and all hands on deck, it is all possible. It really is possible.
On the subject of masks, Jenna Houston asks, will you do something to remove the mask requirement, leave it up to the families to choose? I think we covered that. But she said she thinks it's unreasonable and unhealthy, and she'll be forced to pull her kids from public school system if this continues. And another a question arises about private schools. Is it fair to assume that all schools are covered by, not just public, but all private schools are covered by the mandate as well to wear masks? Superintendent Thurman?
I can't speak for the private school system, but the order to wear a mask comes from the California Department of Public Health. And that means that they're creating an order that they're expecting all students in all schools and all staff and all adults to follow. I can't imagine that that would not extend to every school in our state. But I'll get an answer. I'll check in with my staff to see if someone can get us an answer before we finish here tonight. But when the State Department of Public Health makes an order like that, it is an order that is expected to be enforced by even the local county health officers. And it would seem to me that it would go against the logic of why they've made the order to keep everyone safe to say that it exists in some schools and not. Again, I wish that we didn't have to wear masks, and I look forward to the time when we won't. And there is a time when we can expect and hope that we won't. But for now, as of yesterday, the Department of Public Health has made an order that they expect every single one of us, whenever we are in a school, to be wearing a mask for safety reasons.
Another question on that. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator.
Yeah, Rick, I agree with the superintendent. And I would think that these private schools would want to adhere to the state policies and CDC guidelines as well. They want their students to be healthy. They want their teachers to be safe. And I just think it's important that everybody is on the same page. This is why it's happening.
I think we can all agree that it's inconvenient to wear a mask, and just think of all the people who have been serving us for all these months behind the counter wearing the mask for 8 hours, 10 hours a day. We have Laurel on the line on the phone with our first question from Sonoma County. Laurel, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much for taking my question. So I live in rural Sonoma County, and my internet connection is pretty subpar. And I've been working remotely, and my daughter's been attending remote school, and obviously she's just continually been getting kicked off. And I'm just wondering what the state can do to improve connectivity for rural residents.
Sunny, I guess we'll have you go with that one.
I was going to defer to Senator Dodd. What is before the legislature and an agreement between the governor and the legislature or the legislative leadership is an investment of $6 billion with a commitment that about $4 billion of that is to make the connections that are called middle mile. So there is robust fiber out to all points of California, and then another $2 billion for the last mile connection. So Laurel, I think you should register your address with actually the regional consortium in Sonoma County, Mike Nichols, or tell Senator Dodd to make sure that we put it on the planning priorities to get to you. And what we found during the pandemic is that we actually need robust fiber everywhere in California. There can be a multitude of what we call the end user technologies. Sometimes we're going to be wireless, sometimes it will be wireline. But when we have 6.2 million children online simultaneously going to school, and another 10 million folks trying to get online at the same time, we actually can't hotspot our way out of the pandemic. We have to actually have underlying technology that works. So that's what the state is planning to do. We think the commitment on that $6 billion is going to be voted out by the end of this week. And there is a focus to try to get all this deployment to happen in a very short period of time. So we appreciate your question, and we've got to make sure every student can not only participate in distance learning, but every family, as Lisette said, can participate in, let's say, telehealth. And that requires bandwidth. What you said, Lisette, was very, I think, instructive, that the combination of in-person and technology can actually extend the resources of a school, and you can do better service if you have a blend. Senator, I think you want to comment on what you're about to do.
Well said, Sunny. I think everything you said was very accurate. For the caller, though, we've been talking about the digital divide mostly around economics and the disadvantaged communities. And believe me, even in urban areas, we have so much of that needs to be corrected. But we also recognize the rural lack of connectivity in rural areas. And I believe there's an earmark of $1 billion of that $6 billion that will be going for the rural digital divide.
And each county is to receive $5 million at the very beginning of this whole allocation process. So you also might want to call your county supervisors and your particular representative in Sonoma County to register, hey, this is my address, and I want to make sure you're focusing on my needs.
Thank you very much. The phones lines are open at the studio, 707-933-9133 for your questions, 707-933-9133. We've had a number of email questions about the ethnic studies curriculum in California. I don't know if that's a state curriculum or a county, so I'm going to start with you, Superintendent Thurman. Would you explain what's being offered in that regard?
Yes, there is a bill in the legislature, AB 101, that if passed would make ethnic studies a graduation requirement, that students would have to take at least one semester to graduate. And by ethnic studies, what we're talking about is a course that would highlight the contributions of many groups of people of color, including African Americans, the Latinx community, our Native American community, and the Asian Pacific Islander community. And ethnic studies is something that has been around for more than 52 years, mostly at the university level. But there's been some interest for many, many years to bring it to the K-12 area, some even say pre-K, so that students of color have a chance to learn about the contributions of their ancestors. It actually has benefits for everyone. Everyone to learn about the contributions of Californians who've made this such a great state. And so that bill would create an ethnic studies graduation requirement. Several years ago, there was legislation that authorized the creation of what we call a model ethnic studies curriculum guide. That's just a fancy way of saying that the state would create an example of what ethnic study template and curriculum could look like, so that school districts can decide for themselves how to build their own curricula. And so the state, through the California Department of Education and the State Board of Education, has spent the last 2 or so years building this curriculum, this draft curriculum. It is actually now built, and it is available for any district that wants to take it up voluntarily. It is not a mandate, but it is available to any district that wants to take it up, as an example. The state budget that is now passed and signed into law also has resources to provide training on how to build a curriculum and how to train teachers and staff on how to have the conversations play out about ethnic studies. This is a great time for me, for the state, from my perspective, that I believe that we can support students of color, close learning gaps, but really help everyone in the state, regardless of their background, see the contributions of some very important Americans and some very important Californians who've helped to build this state, and a chance to celebrate the wonderful diversity of the state. And so you'll have to stay tuned until the end of the legislative session to see if AB 101, the bill that would make it a graduation requirement, will pass. But there are many school districts that have gone ahead and created their own ethnic studies curricula. And so that is an option that every one of our school districts still has.
I'll just follow up on that. I plan on voting for this. I think it's high time that we have this type of curriculum in our schools. If we haven't taken notice of what's happening in our country, this is something that I've had even a good friend of mine from Sonoma County that called me today, very concerned about how this could change the dynamics of attendance in public schools. I really look to people and just say, don't be afraid of this. This is something that is, as the superintendent said, we need to celebrate our diversity, the contributions that are made by, everybody. And, at the end of the day, I think our students will be enlightened, and perhaps attitudes changed. And once again, I'll say there's nothing to worry about here. This is something that I believe will be positive for our state going forward.
I have a couple of questions about the returning to school, such things as, will everyone have to return to school? Who decides? Will everyone be required to go back to school? Kristen Murray asked, my children have thrived in our rural community through pandemic using a homeschool charter program option. What can be done in coming years to preserve that option, to provide a quality curriculum for students whose families choose homeschool? Are we back to, from my knowledge, everyone has always been required to go to school. Is that the way we're going to come out of the pandemic, or are people going to have options to stay at home?
I would certainly encourage Kristen to check in with her local district just to make sure that she understands what that school district wants to offer. the way this is going to work, every school district and its board can make decisions about any kind of independent study that is offered. But having said that, I don't see anything in the latest budget and the accompanying trailer bill language that comes with it that would do anything to end the flexibility to have homeschool. That means that you can continue to have homeschool. There's nothing that changes any charter school. As whatever choices a family makes, they will continue to have. The only thing that this budget and this trailer bill says is that if there is to be independent study, there are certain expectations, and I think you'll find them reasonable. If someone's going to be an independent study, they should have access to a computer and access to the internet. They should have a way to be deeply connected to the school. There should be time for them to have direct contact with their teacher, and that can be through their computer. The only thing that the budget and the trailer bill is saying is that independent study should not be a way for any student to get lost, to not get support, and that if there's ever a moment when a student needs more, there are regular check-in intervals for school staff to say, we're concerned, we want to get you support for your student, whether that's tutoring, counseling, or saying, maybe they should come back to in-person instruction. But the reality is that homeschool continues to be a choice, that charter schools continue to be a choice. And, while the default is that most students are expected to come back for in-person instruction, California recognizes that there's no one size that fits all. And so this trailer bill creates ways to create individual choices based on the needs of individual students, so long as we're not going to put any student in a place where they could be harmed because they don't have the tools or the support to be successful.
I would agree. The waiver allowing California schools to engage in distance learning has expired. Our current understanding in this legislation is that while distance learning is no longer an option, there is the option to continue an independent study if a parent is not yet comfortable with their child returning to school in person. And what I'm really looking forward to, as Superintendent Thurman said, is that this legislation strengthens the independent study option for parents. So in fact, it will provide a more robust independent study option with a lot more checks and balances and supports in place. And so we actually are looking forward to having that as yet an additional option for parents. They may not have experience before with learning before. And so we are actually looking forward to it because it really strengthens and provides yet that option for parents that may not have accessed it before. And options for parents are critically important because, again, there is no one size fits all. And we need to acknowledge and recognize the unique learning needs of our students. And that's where I think we may have missed the mark previously, where we looked at all students in a broad stroke. And what we have the opportunity to do now is to reimagine how we address the very specific and unique learning needs of each and every individual student. And the independent study option is yet one more tool to allow us to do that.
And I would just add that given the need for choice that parents can make and reimagining the educational opportunities, as you said, Lisette, it's the technology that actually enables that. As I said, it's just a tool. It's powerful and empowering, but that tool of technology gives more choices also to parents of how they're going to ensure the education. I think that there is an obligation that all of us who work on the public interest side have to ensure that all students do have the access to a quality education. But just the notion of personalized learning and being able to differentiate among students, their needs, and to tailor the curricula to their pace and their interests comes with technology. And so it is more than just the sort of passive use to connect for distance learning. It's really now reimagining as technology becomes a central part of the teaching, learning, and I must keep underscoring parent engagement in education. It is so much more convenient for a parent to participate in a forum of their school on, let's say, the local control accountability plan, and to have their input if they're connected by the computer that goes home from the school, and they get to use that to participate in the governance of the school. They may not have the luxury of going to a parent-teacher conference during the work hours of their job. It may be inconvenient when they're taking care of other children. So the technology is also very empowering for parents to be a part of governing their school.
Can you talk a little bit, Sunny, about the whole trend that pandemic has caused of people working at home and working remotely and leaving their home and going elsewhere? I know some people who are here from New York City, and their kids have been going to school at 5:30 in the morning to do their school, and the parents can work remote. So if that option is not still there for them, what happens?
I think we just all said, thank you, Rick. You've underscored there's actually been a fairly interesting demographic shift and location shift where families that are either from more urban areas in California move out to rural counties, or from other states. That is all enabled by the technology. People who might have had a job in New York and they had to be in New York for it have moved to California or to Idaho or Washington, and they can still maintain their job. We at the California Emerging Technology Fund partnered with the University of Southern California this year on our statewide survey on broadband adoption. And we found very interesting responses from all of the participants throughout California. It's a scientific survey, random digit dialing for that we've done for now 14 years. And at least 80% of all people who do work outside of the home want to have a choice to continue to work part-time, part of the work week remotely. Now, as someone who was the former Secretary for Transportation in California, and I was always trying to relieve traffic congestion, I actually find that to be very hopeful. The best trip is a virtual trip from my perspective. I can reduce traffic congestion and also reduce impacts on the environment. But what it also says, Rick, is if we have that very robust network, high-speed internet infrastructure throughout California, there are more choices for everybody. And a lot of rural counties are looking at this as a potential for economic vitality, revitalization. We certainly know, and in the North Bay, this is a very sobering reality, that we also have a lot of emergencies, wildfires, other issues to respond to. And it's just a mere public safety issue as well, to have that communication available to everyone through the internet.
Just curious, is there a responsibility for a school district to educate a child who used to be in the district and has now moved away because of the pandemic? Should they not go to school where they're living? Anybody?
I'm deferring to the education experts.
I imagine that this is a new question that districts all across the country are going to have to answer for the first time. In California, as you all know, we establish eligibility to attend a school based on residency, and you live within school district boundaries. And of course, we allow transfers for those who don't live in those boundaries. If your family, someone works in the district or there's some other reason to benefit to provide that transfer. And so this is a new question that I believe districts all across the country are going to have to answer. And since we're all answering at the same time, I imagine that the best minds will come together to think it through and how to be thoughtful. I'll be honest with you, Rick, I don't think anybody's running out trying to say, hey, prove your residency because we think you may have moved to Iowa during the pandemic. I think that right now our schools recognize that we need to welcome our students back. And however they choose to want to come back, we want to support them. I'm just going to put it out there. In the pandemic, we saw about 160,000 students who disenrolled in our state schools. We have to send the message that we welcome you back, we want you back, and you're going to get a great quality education, that things will be better than they were before, and when you need support, you will have it. And so I don't think it serves anyone's interest to start trying to come up with some complicated rules to measure where somebody lives if they've moved during the pandemic. Let's just acknowledge that hardship has lent itself to travel and transport, and in some cases, new opportunity. You know, again, we all said it, there's no one size fits all. We think that most students will do best in an in-person environment, and we've heard that from our families. We've also heard from families who say they want the ability for some version of in-person instruction. For students who've been bullied, they have found that this is a better environment. For students who sometimes have experienced microaggressions and racial kind of microaggressions, they have found this is a better environment. And for other students who just feel capable of being successful in an independent kind of study environment, this is just a better environment. It would be wrong for us, I think, short-sighted, to just flat out say that's not going to be an option. I think that while it's not the way education was built, the pandemic has taught us many things. And it has taught us that when you have a good balance of live instruction, direct contact with your teacher, you can be successful as a student either in person or through online instruction. And so, you know, we want to give our California students and families the best choices, the best options, and the best quality education. And I think the question about if someone has moved is one that we'll have to look into. But from my standpoint, we should not be asking anybody to re-verify where they live. If someone chooses to be a part of our districts, we should be grateful and provide them the best supports and services that we can to support their students.
I would agree, Rick. Thank you, Superintendent Thurman, for that perspective. The key words from my perspective are reimagining and transforming. And we can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing and expect different results. We have to recognize that some students who were not previously successful in an in-person, at school, 6 hours a day setting, are now being more successful in an independent study, virtual learning environment. We've got to be able to let loose of our old paradigms and think about how we continue to support these students on their path to success. We've said multiple times, there is no one size fits all. And I think that one of the ways that we have failed in the past as a system is to try and fit everyone into a system that was created so many years ago for a different time and space. And this is where we have the opportunity to reimagine how we will provide an excellent education to each and every student who comes to our schoolroom doors, whether they be physical doors or virtual doors. We have an opportunity to reimagine and transform and let loose of those old paradigms. And this is the time and space which we find each other. Let's not lose that opportunity.
So what you're saying basically is that out of every crisis comes an opportunity, and we don't want to. There's so many ways that we can educate. Let's try them all. Let's see what works for the individual. I have a question from Barbara Zeller asked, and I'll address this to you, Lisette, because you're the only person who has a specific district. Is this district receiving migrant children who have crossed the southern border without their parents? If so, how are the districts accommodating these children during school hours? Are the children being placed in foster care if they don't have relatives in the area?
So we are a county office of education. We're not a school district per se. We do have a migrant center in Dixon Unified School District, and we are addressing the needs of our students that come our way. And it's really about looking at individual needs. And I don't know the extent to which Dixon Unified School District may be receiving unaccompanied students. And certainly across the state, our school districts are addressing the needs of every student that comes to their doors.
So I think what we've heard tonight is that all systems are go coming out of the pandemic. We have the budget, we have the innovation, we have the desire, we have the capability of making the educational experience for all children and families as best as it can be. Senator Dodd, that's my wrap up, but it's your show, so why don't you do the wrap up? Unmute yourself, please.
Boy, you'd think we'd have that down by now, huh? Well, I'll tell you. So, we've come a long way since the coronavirus upended our lives a little more than a year ago. It was a tragic jolt that closed our state and cost more than 62,000 lives. Thousands of small businesses were shuttered. Millions of jobs were lost. Schools closed. Our normal way of doing things came to a screeching halt. But California is resilient. Together, we worked hard to turn things around. People wore masks. We may still have to wear masks from time to time. They got vaccinated. More people need to get vaccinated. And tonight we talked about what is still needed and what we are doing to respond to that need. We've made progress, but there's still a lot of work to do. As always, my office is standing by to assist you with questions about the services discussed here tonight. I'd like to thank all three of the panelists. You're all friends. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy work schedules and also personal schedules as we come out of this pandemic. And to everybody, KSVY, thanks again for hosting yet this 12th town hall. And to all of you that tuned in tonight, thank you very much. Have a safe and pleasant evening.
Thank you, Senator Dodd. And just one note, Superintendent Thurman has confirmed that the public health mask order for schools is private and public, no matter where you go. Thank you. Thank everybody for tuning in tonight on a beautiful Wednesday evening. And from all of us at KSCY and Sonoma TV, we appreciate it. And Senator Dodd, we appreciate the opportunity of doing this. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you.